us some background and share a little bit about what they're doing to help us frame the discussion. We then have some breakouts, some questions to get the discussion going. And I invite you to either just come off mute or raise your hand to answer some of those. And then we'll close out with a Jamboard, a little Jamboard activity, so we can actually kind of get some of those actionable steps and recommendations for ReImagine sort of down on paper and walk away with some next steps here. So I'm going to ask first, is Steve Herzenberg on the call? Yes. Steve?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm here.
So Steve, can you provide us a little bit of introduction and framing of this topic from your work with ReImagine Appalachia, please, to get us started?
Sure. I guess what I'll say is the issue of job quality is a really important issue and a challenging issue. We've at some point later in the conversation, maybe I'll share. We've run a bunch of numbers on apprenticeship in manufacturing in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Um, documenting the lack of diversity of apprentices, but also documenting the modest wages in apprenticeship, particularly in the non-union side, both entry wages and exit wages. So that's just sort of one factoid. Again, if you look over decades, manufacturing in the late 70s paid a lot more than other sectors, controlling for education and experience. The manufacturing wage benefit has shrunk dramatically, since then. And so what it means, and in some sense, this is not that different than construction. Conceptually, this kind of a two-part problem. It's not just an issue of diversifying access to manufacturing jobs, which is an important issue. But there's also an issue, as in construction, about worrying about the quality of jobs, because otherwise you're helping, women and people of color get jobs that aren't that good. So again, part of the general approach of ReImagine on construction, but also on manufacturing, is to sort of capitalize on the labor standards in the federal legislation, to try to work on the ground in collaboration with labor and other partners, to make sure that those labor standards are honored. The folks from Coalfield Justice are, at least from the distance that I can look, really exemplary in terms of really building in real relationships with unions and commitments to labor standards into their very big federal grant they won a year or two ago. So anyway, that's sort of I can share more, if it makes sense, about the details of the apprenticeship numbers, and we can think together about how we grow apprenticeship, including, that good jobs that are apprenticeships leading to permanent careers. But for now, let me stop there. And thanks for that opportunity.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. Jen, I'm going to pass it to you now to share a little bit about your organization and work as well, because I think it'll help us frame this issue. And some of you may have heard Jen's great introduction in the earlier panel, but just in case you haven't.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who weren't in our previous panel, our organization is the Survivor Advocacy Outreach Program. We are an impact organization that prevents and responds to relational violence in Southeast Ohio, and started an initiative called New Leaf Justice Enterprises, which is a holistic workforce development program with wraparound services. And what I think makes us a little unique in the workforce development sphere is how we center anti-oppression in our work, because in our society, there are basically some people are viewed to be more preferable or valuable than others, and violence is the tool that reinforces those hierarchies. And so we see anti-violence work as being anti-oppressive work. And without understanding the intersection of those, we can't prevent violence, we can't adequately respond. And so this is really core to what we do, is how we think about how do we create options, opportunity, and opinions for those folks who have historically been shut out, and leverage our privilege as an organization and a nonprofit to make those opportunities possible. So I would just love to hear what other folks are thinking and ways that they're addressing, because this work is hard.
Thank you, Jen. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-facilitator, Michelle Burris, to introduce herself and share a little bit about the Industry and Inclusion Project.
Sure. Thank you, Tanu. Hello again, everyone. My name is Michelle Burris, and I'm a fellow at the Century Foundation. We're about a 104-year-old independent policy think tank, and I look at the intersection of workforce development and racial equity. And to that point, together, along with UMA, we created a program called the Industry and Inclusion Program, and we're honored one of our members is in the breakout session today, Erica Staley. But since it's complex and we're going on 4 years of it, I have a few slides prepared. I want to be cognizant of time, so I'm going to do my best to share this information within the next 5 minutes. But I'm going to share my screen so I can try to explain it well. And so the Industry and Inclusion Program was actually created in the summer of 2020, where we noticed that there is a shortage of manufacturing jobs. Back then, it was projected that 2 million jobs will need to be filled by 2030, and now I believe that number is 800,000 jobs need to be filled, according to the National Associations of Manufacturers. And so we came with the premise that we want to ensure that those jobs are going to be filled, particularly with people of color and with women and people who have been the most left out, including people in the Appalachia region. And we wanted to do it this way because when we think about deindustrialization, we look at who was the hardest hit by the loss of manufacturing jobs, and that was particularly communities of color. And so we used this program to create a national learning community. And that community was created, as I mentioned, in 2020. And the Industry and Inclusion Program aims to increase the diversity of the manufacturing workforce by reducing racial disparities in student outcomes, such as depth of learning and credential attainment. To achieve this goal, we also created, we have different research, we have toolkits, and we also created a model of what we call impactful credentialing in collaboration with our partners in community colleges. And I'll dive deeper into that in a few more slides. And so our program is based on 4 pillars, particularly specialized recruitment. We work with partners such as Erica and community colleges to really identify students who may have heard of manufacturing or maybe just have a negative paradigm of manufacturing. How can we recruit them to see themselves in a career, particularly in mechatronics or in robotics? We look at inclusive training and credentialing, so ensuring that when we work with these community colleges that the classrooms are welcoming and there's a sense of belonging, and that the students also feel like they are embraced, particularly when they are in apprenticeships and when they're in their workplace. The third is comprehensive supports and resources. I think I heard this earlier, childcare and transportation being the top 2. So when we think about people who need to get to a manufacturing site, for example, at 5 or 6 a.m., how do we ensure that transportation is available, particularly for people who are the least underrepresented in the sector? And then as we talked about recently as well, when we think about job quality pathways, because to Steve's point, we want to make sure that we are not recruiting minoritized communities into jobs with stagnant wages. So working with unions, working with community-based organizations to ensure that there is a path for upward mobility. And so when we thought about where the students are, particularly, after we launched our first iteration, we found that most of the students are located at community colleges. I think the stat is about nearly over 80% of students, community college students, typically stay within their communities. And when we think about connecting them to jobs, we identify community colleges as having the largest number of students, and those were our partners, particularly for the second iteration. So with that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we also developed a model of impactful credentialing. And this model helps training providers embed culturally competent approaches within manufacturing education programming. And so I'll provide one example just to be cognizant of time. But when we think about who are our participants, it's community colleges, it's employers, it's workforce development boards, and it's people such as all of you in this call. And so we believe if we can combine credentialing with racially conscious industry partnerships, wraparound services, and cultural change among employers, we can connect hundreds of thousands of more workers into living wage careers. And we believe this model can be applied to community colleges and also to organizations such as all of you on this call. Okay, so this is just an example of where we are. We've been in Illinois, we've been in Ohio. We trying to connect with more people in Pennsylvania, but this has been a lot of active engagement, and we are also hoping to expand more to the South. But we have worked in the Appalachia region and excited to learn more from all of you in this session. And in just in terms of our reach and impact, I'll go through this rather quickly. We have seen impressive reach, and we saw that this is really driving real impact for both learners in general and learners of color. We looked at quantitative data submitted by our cohort and also qualitative data, and we found that the colleges who implement our programs and our pillars with high fidelity saw a 25% increase in enrollment and an 11% increase in credentials awarded for all students. And for learners of color, this was also a 10% increase in both enrollment and credential attainment. And so we saw that using those culturally competent approaches, using the recruitment, it does work. This is just an example. As I mentioned, we conduct research, and we also profile a lot of our members. One was particularly in Ohio, outside of Cleveland, Elyria, Ohio, and we've also conducted research, particularly highlighting our programs in Alabama, and also for Erica Staley's program here in Chicago. And so I'll just end with this kind of one example. We profiled a college named Sierra College, and they're based in California. And in order to create more inclusive pathways for students of color in manufacturing programs, they began hiring more women faculty, particularly in their welding program. And we saw, and Sierra College is seeing, how more women are enrolling in these programs, particularly because of a woman faculty. So they may have came through an entire K-12 pipeline thinking that welding was not for them, manufacturing was not for them. But once they arrived to Sierra College and they had a woman faculty member teaching them welding, we saw the achievement and also much more women being retained and also placed in jobs. So I'm going to stop there because I want to leave time to hear from all of you, but that is just an overview of our industry and inclusion program.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle, Jen, Steve, for those framing remarks. And we'll definitely be coming back to some of those examples as we frame this conversation and feel free others who have best practices, ideas, strategies that have worked. I want to share those out. But I want to transition us now into some group discussion questions that we developed in partnership with ReImagine Appalachia to help them kind of think about what are some of the issues in the region and how we can create a work plan to address those. So the first question I'll pose is, in this region, what are some of the specific barriers and challenges faced by low-wage women and Black workers trying to enter the sector and obtain good quality manufacturing jobs from your perspective and your work? And then you could just raise your hand or feel free to come off mute and jump in.
This is Joanne.
Joanne, I think you're on mute still.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think one of the big barriers is sexism and racism. And for example, in my borough, I'm a council member. A year and a half ago, council decided that they were not going to institute a local anti-discrimination ordinance because, quote, "We have no discrimination in this town." And I believe that there needs to be a couple things, some kind of training of the workers or potential workers, that there are ways that you can get educational training on how to stand up when you're getting pushback from the employers or the government or other, that it's possible. And also some training on, if you do believe your discrimination, where can you go? That's it.
Thank you, Joanne. I see John's hand up and then Alexandra.
I think I want to go back a little bit further than where we're talking about. I had the opportunity to work at two community colleges, one of which was in Pennsylvania. And the thing that I found most interesting is that anyone who wanted to go to community college was accepted, but they had to take a test. And they're coming up, and I was told that on an average, the student is reading at a 6th grade level. We heard earlier, that we want to take we're moving into the technology realm. So we're creating a workforce that may be motivated to work, but really does not have the ability to work on their own to read what we need them to do. I've heard a lot about transportation, and I think that's great when you're talking about in cities or towns. But where I live, very much in a rural area, and this is again one of the things. Community college that I worked at covered a number of counties. One of the big problems is the students could not get there. There was no transportation that would cross county lines. So I think we need to get down further than that the city problem of transportation. And of course, and then I think we really need to address and that we have a good workforce, but when you hear we had restaurants that came into town and they can't hire people to work because people can't pass a drug test. So when we at that level, if we can't find workers who are capable of doing this, then as we can bring in all the technology we want, but what manufacturer wants to come into an area where they can't find a quality workforce? And I think that's, we need to start this and at the grade school level and working on this. So, and unless we have that quality workforce, I think we're just wasting our time. And I am extremely sorry to start off being negative about this. And that's all.
Thank you, John. Thank you for laying out some of those barriers. I really appreciate it. And I turn it over to Alexandra next.
Hi, kind of piggybacking off of what John said, I'm here in Aliquippa, which is in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. It's a majority rural county as well, although Aliquippa is the city side of the county. Transportation is a big issue here. And it's not just because public transportation is terrible, but a lot of people also don't have their driver's licenses, so they can't drive. So they don't have cars, so they can't get to places. But also talking about that education piece, my organization works with majority high school students, and they can't write a full paragraph by themselves. So what he's saying is very true. Like, we need a lot of these workforce education programs are targeting adults, and they're advertising majority in places that are targeting males. But we need to work on how we're targeting our female students as well, because they are also capable of doing all of these jobs, and they're a lot of the times they're left out. Not, I don't think people are intentionally leaving them out, but like the way that it's marketed, it's not marketed to female students in the places and areas that they would be, so they miss those opportunities. But also, we really need to beef up those education programs in that high school area, because we have a lot of like early childhood and elementary school programs to, you know, teach kids STEM, but people always leave out middle school and high school students, and that's kind of like where we need to be hitting.
Great, thank you. Mohammed?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I would like to see the barriers and the challenges workers face to enter good manufacturing jobs from the psychological perspective, or to be more specific, it's more about their mindset. From my experience of working with different colleagues that I had at various industries, I came to understand that unfortunately, many colleagues that I had did not have this self-esteem or self-confidence that would actually take them to the next step of their jobs. Speaking of getting promoted, many of them were like not ready to take more responsibilities. I think if they are given a chance to work on their potential, to find out how much powerful they are, how much potential they have, they probably gain their self-esteem or self-confidence back to believe in themselves and the possibilities of their dreams. More or less, they are, affected by their environment, by the people around them, or the social media is one thing. So just to wrap it up, I think it's all about mindset and about what they think of themselves. And if they are given enough opportunities or chances to explore their potential and strengths, such as like a strength finder, they will be able to, be confident enough to change lots of things about themselves, start change from themselves and then their environment, and probably entering to a high quality manufacturing job. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So important. I just want to direct everyone to the chat where there are already some great resources being dropped in response to these issues that are being brought up. And then can I also just ask that when you introduce yourself, you let us know what organization you're with as well. And I'll pass it over to Paul now.
Thank you. My name is Paul Hallaker, and I spent my career at Penn State. I'm retired, but I'm working for the Pennsylvania Industrial Hemp Engine, which is a NSF Regional Innovation Engine. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to throw out an idea, picking up on Mohammed's comments about esteem, but also some of the other things I've heard here about car access to automobiles and lacking driver's licenses as barriers. So this is just an off the wall idea, but I've been incubating this in my head for decades. And my suggestion is this, that you don't need to own a car to get a driver's license. You need access to a car, and you need somebody to teach you how to drive. And I would love to see a demonstration program to use ride sharing, access to vehicles through ride sharing programs, and mentors to teach people to drive, and take them through the process of getting a learner's permit and actually getting ready and going to take the driver's test. You don't need any formal training or certification to do these things. All you need is legitimate access to a car, ability to fill out forms, and somebody with a driver's license to help you. And so many people who are not included don't have driver's licenses. It's also an ID, so it puts to rest all the voter ID issues if a person has a driver's license. And it also gives a person a lot of standing. I think many people are aware that in many poor communities, having a driver's license is kind of a badge of distinction. So I'm just putting that out there. It's just kind of a rifle shot idea that I think might be worth trying. So that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I think that's a good point as well, just really drilling down. Instead of throwing out childcare and transportation, how do we drill down on what does that look like on eliminating that barrier? So I appreciate that. We're going to move on to the second question. We have a lot of ground to cover, but we're going to keep it moving. The second question is, what barriers exist to access training for these jobs? So when we think about the training aspect of it, what do you all identify as the barriers in the Appalachia region?
This is Flecker, if I may.
Please.
Flecker Vera from Cincinnati with Sustain Energy Cooperative. We are a worker-owned business with the Steelworkers Union, and we're a small business with solar panels and energy efficiency and energy audits. And the challenge we have, we try to hire a lot of first generation, reentry citizens and so forth. But as a business, it costs us around $5,000 to have somebody from no training to be able to do attic insulation and things like that. By the time they break tools, break a ceiling, the learning curve and the less production. So the success with the reentry and people that have challenges, first generation immigrants, tend to be lower, especially with the reentry and the ones that have some type of drug addiction. So we need to have, and we don't get any grants. So, but we still want to have this, still they are part of the community, how we train these folks. So if there was a grant for small businesses that can, reduce some of the expenses so we can hire more of these folks, will be easier for small business to be able to take the risk and hire those folks that really need the help. That will be very, very helpful for us to keep doing that, because right now we try to have a ratio of like around 40% or actually more like 60% vulnerable communities and 40% stable communities, so they can have the license and drive and so forth. But it's been a challenge. How do we pay for this expensive training and still keep the lights on and keep our products competitive in the market?
Thank you so much. And thank you also for just shedding some more light too on what those barriers can look like for the immigrant community and also the reentry population. So thank you so much. Scott, we'll turn it over to you. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, my name's Scott Shoup. I'm with Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. I'm one of the East Kentucky organizers. And one of our barriers and hurdles is, all of Eastern Kentucky is old coal communities. And we still have some coal being mined and going on today. So, and of course, we all know that coal has been king and always what's paid, the highest wages and the most money. So people flock to those jobs. And a lot of the barrier now is that those individuals that are trying to leave the coal industry to find other work, they're having to give up so much pay. They're not being able to take care of their families. And I think just being able to let go of that fossil fuel industry as a whole is a big barrier for us, especially here in Eastern Kentucky. And I think it's a very valid point to look at and evaluate, because, in my opinion, until we can get, some type of federal money and or state legislation that will train these guys or retrain them into professions in energy efficiency or renewable energy or whatever it may be moving forward, it's got to be a comparable wage to what they make now, or it's not easy to walk away from. And I talk about that from a personal standpoint, because I'm actually an individual who spent 22 years underground in the coal mines and then left the industry and started a renewable energy technology business for myself. And now I'm actually a community organizer advocating for energy efficiency and renewables throughout Eastern Kentucky. So just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. That's a great point you pulled up around kind of the wage gap and the wage differences that can occur in training. I'm sorry, Tina, did you want to chime in with something too?
No, I just wanted to thank Scott for that as well. I mean, I think it's so important to think about to think about the heritage and the the kind of existing industries as we transition into these new opportunities in a clean energy economy, and the different perspectives and lived experiences of those that are undergoing this transition. And there was a great conversation in the earlier panel. If you didn't have a chance to see it, it's recorded around that transition as well.
And I thank you, and I do appreciate that, because the history means a lot. That's just like me myself. I'm a 4th generation coal miner, so the history is strong.
Great. I think in the interest of time, we'll keep moving to our next question, and feel free to keep dropping some of these barriers and into the chat. There's a great discussion going on there. But one of the other stakeholders that I'm not sure if we have represented in this room, but are so important to thinking about how to address barriers for a more diverse workforce as our employers. So how do we engage employers around these topics? How do we help employers create more equitable and accessible pathways into careers, and also create more inclusive workplaces? And so I wonder if anyone has any perspectives to share, if there are any employers in the room, not to put you in the hot seat, but if you'd like to speak to that, would love to hear some local perspectives on that. Flecker, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, so we are a small business in Cincinnati. We employ around 10 folks. And I think the challenge that we have in solar is to find, we don't have enough. I mean, I think it's in green construction, I think is 4% women and 8% people of color, I think. So we need to diversify that. We want to meet that challenge that we have for reducing our footprint in the next 7 years or 6 years now. And we, as women come, I've seen cases that they come. We've been a failure in terms of hiring women. Not because we didn't try, but it's been difficult to find. And I think that challenge is that as a trade, as a industry, we're very chauvinistic. And I've met women that go to this apprenticeship school for a year or two, and they go and they don't have a bathroom for them. And because the trade is very chauvinistic, they don't feel welcomed, and they leave after 2 weeks. And that's gonna keep happening. And unless we have, I've seen efforts in the IBW did something, look, I think the electricians union, somewhere in Appalachia, and they created a position that was a person that was in charge for women complaints. So they came, they had somebody to specifically go and speak to about it. It was a women typically, and then they were complaining about women issues, and that was their whole job. And then that local started increasing the membership of women significantly. And the experience from that was that, kind of going on topics here, sorry, but I think it's important that as soon as they got the first 6 to 8 women that grow that from that community, it was easier because when people came, it would see themselves. So what is difficult to get the first few ones is less difficult just to grow the women population. And a lot of employers already see that. I mean, a lot of solar companies, energy efficiency, see that without women and without people of color, we won't be able to meet this challenge. Yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you so much for that, and for sharing some of the perspective of women in the workplace. It's really helpful. Does anyone else want to respond? And feel free to just come off mute.
Oh, sure.
This is,
Go ahead.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
you go ahead. Okay. I'm Bryn Martin. I'm in Northeastern Kentucky. I'm also with Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and with Poor People's Campaign. And we're asking people to mark their calendars for March 2nd, where we're rallying at capitals across the country against institutional poverty and a lot of the homelessness and joblessness and the challenges that people are dealing with, just to survive, with healthcare and so many other issues. So please mark your date for that, and there'll be some marching and wonderful organizations across the country. So check for your local area. Ours, of course, will be in Frankfurt.
Great, thank you. March 2nd. And Brent, can you put more information on that in the chat as well?
Yes.
Great. Steve, I think
So this is Steve Hertz from Keystone Research Center and ReImagine Appalachia. So and what I put in the chat is that in terms of employers, thing would be neat to try to do is kind of emulate the approach that the Restaurant Opportunities Center has been using for best part of a couple decades, which is that industry is famous for lowered employers, but they've scoured for exemplary employers that pay decently. And you could actually find more of those in manufacturing than you would in the restaurant sector. There are enlightened employers that got the memo about paying people this decently. A lot of manufacturing is very capital intensive. And so, if you chisel people in terms of wages and benefits, you're often shooting yourself in the foot. So I think it would be powerful to
Oh, Steve, I think we lost you there.
faded off there.
Yeah,
How's the connection now?
we can hear
How's
you.
the connection?
We
I'm
can
going
hear.
to put my video.
Oh, I think we lost you.
Okay. No, what I ended up with is in terms of who might organize higher road employers, like finding them.
So I think we'll come back to Steve once his connection improves. Mavry, I saw your hand come up and down, and there you are. I'm wondering if you want to.
Yeah, I've been debating on whether or not I want to use my ears and listen today, or if I want to talk.
Go ahead and talk.
But yeah, so my name is Mavry Davis. I'm a co-op developer based in Charleston, West Virginia. And so a lot of what I've been hearing, I think a strategy, an important strategy we can and should look towards is how do we develop worker co-ops within some of these manufacturing sectors. I see that there's one worker co-op on here right now, but there are also challenges in that. So, we try to address those challenges here through our loan fund, and we provide very patient lending, but even still a barrier we have to, we can only take on so many projects a year because we have to find grant funding to support the ongoing work. As people have been saying, there's a lot of stuff before somebody's ready to actually work in and own a business or get the training or skills they need. So there's a lot of that work, but I do think there's opportunities with a lot of this federal funding coming down. If we could focus on a strategy, because there's not, as we've been highlighting, there's not going to be enough employers ready to hire folks, or what's the timeline on the training and all that stuff. I think that worker co-ops are a way to allow time for the training and development, but then the workers own some of the businesses that can come out of this to fill the market gaps. And then also, how do we support the ones that are already in the game, Sustainergy, that's already on the call right now, right? How do we get them the support they need to be able to hire some more people and all that type of stuff. So, but worker co-ops, I'm thinking there's a solution we can work towards within that as like a development strategy.
Great, thank you so much. It's super interesting to hear about worker co-ops, and we'd love to kind of lift that up as a best practice in our next activity as well. Mohammed?
Yes, thank you. Mohammed, again, a friend of Sustainable Business Center at Pittsburgh University. Excuse me, to address the employers who actually engage in this issue, since we're talking about inclusion and diversity, I think when it comes to recruiting employees from various backgrounds, so let's say cultural backgrounds, maybe nationalities, at some point it's very important to address the cultural awareness. Like both as an employer and also as an employee, it's good for the both parties to know about each other's, cultural values to make the communication more effectively, efficiently, and smooth. It could be very possibly conducted like if the employer actually already knows a little bit about your cultural background, which is great. But at some point, employee can be given an opportunity to express themselves, to have, let's say, a presentation to talk about their cultural background, values, probably strengths and weaknesses. I'm sure that they would be very happy to, explain about themselves or, express themselves. And this will make the work environment very efficient in terms of smooth communications. So again, diversifying or talking about inclusion, we might actually talk about people coming from various backgrounds like myself. So I may have, background in different cultures and work environment experiences, and I would be very happy to be given an opportunity to talk about it. And what, I will actually add a unique perspective or maybe a different perspective to talk in the discussions. So again, cultural awareness would be an important topic, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think that cultural awareness piece is very important as well. All right, so we have about 12 minutes left. Time flew, and we want to be able to capture everyone's input. And so we're going to take about 7 minutes to do a Jamboard activity. If you like Jamboard, yay. If you're not a fan, no problem. We are also going to put the questions in the chat. Jamboard essentially is a virtual whiteboard. So I'm going to explain it through sharing my screen. I think that'll be the easiest part of it. And so we have 4 questions that we are asking everyone. The first question is, what are some concrete next steps that you can take in your own work to further understand these issues? So when you're ready to answer that question, you're going to click on the sticky note here, and then you will type your response here. So I would just say like response and save. And I believe Laura already put the Jamboard link in the chat. And then you will see that there are also multiple questions here. So if you go up top, you will flip through to the next question. The second is, what can ReImagine Appalachia do to support your efforts? What potential resources and organizations are out there doing this work that might support these strategies? What was missing from this conversation, and what questions do you have? What are some models, examples, best practices in diversity and inclusion in manufacturing? And those are all of the questions. So we're going to ask that everyone please take the next 5 minutes to answer those questions. And then we're going to spend the remaining 5 minutes talking about and reflecting as a group. And again, if you're not a fan of Jamboard, no problem. I'm going to put those questions in the chat as well. Feel free to respond in the chat. So we will come back together in 5 minutes after everyone has had an opportunity to respond to each of the questions. Please feel free to unmute if you're having any issues. And here are the questions in the chat as well for everyone to be able to answer them. All right, if everyone can just take about 1 more minute. 1 more minute to answer those 5 questions. And if you are finished, we would love if everyone could start maybe reading through their responses, if you can. All right, since time is of the essence and we have 5 minutes left, I'm going to give some very brief and quick instructions. We are now going to close out, but as we close out, if time permits, we want to give everyone, about 25 of us, if possible, we're going to stick with the time limit, 20 seconds if you can. If you can stick to 20 seconds, that would be great. No more than 30 seconds. Just to talk about what resonated with you or what concrete next step do you have, or a question that you have. We probably won't get to everyone realistically, but we will do our best to try. So again, a concrete next step, a question, or what resonated with you. And I'm going to call on people. Used to be a teacher, so love all the energy. And let's just get started. If everyone can stick to maybe 20 seconds, and we'll see where we are at the 30-minute mark. So Alexandra, starting with you.
Concrete next steps for me at Aliquippa Green, we're going to continue providing education to those middle and high school students, exposing them to all of the opportunities that are available in our region regards to workforce, not just college, because everybody can't go to college, but all the training and resources that are available to them here, while also pushing them to develop stronger critical thinking and problem solving skills.
Love that. Thank you, Alexandra. John.
Make it difficult. Working with the Southwest Pennsylvania Water Network, we have 2 things coming up. One is an Environmental Justice Summit, and then just a water summit. So I think including these issues in these summits is going to be very, very important. And also trying to include those people that this relates to, and not have you need to preach to the congregation and not to the choir. And trying to find that congregation who wants to participate.
Love it. Love not creating an echo chamber. Thanks, John. Is it Kaylee? I hope I pronounced correctly.
Yes, you did. I'm taking away just thinking about we do end of the year surveys. So just thinking about how we can include different varieties of questions as our crew members are exiting our program, and thinking about creatively about who exists in the Pittsburgh region that we could be reaching out to in support of our efforts.
That's great. Thank you. Joanne.
There, I'm unmuted myself now. Well, I think that you need to advocate for local ordinances so you can get down to the local level that go beyond what the state protections are. This is particularly helpful for women, people with disabilities, and low-income people to add things like marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, source of income, and family responsibilities across the lifespan, so that when people do need assistance, they can go to the local Human Relations Commission rather than having to try to go to the state capitol or the regional offices.
Love that. Bringing it more to people. Thanks, Joanne. Ted.
I think for us, just learning about who else is working in this space and in our focus states of West Virginia and Pennsylvania, getting a bit more background on what's working for everybody else. And I think from here, just setting up calls and seeing what we can do to help everybody at the same table to make sure that we're all getting seats at the other tables that we want our people and to get folks who look like us represented at.
Love that. Thank you, Ted. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Jordan, someone we may not have heard from. Jordan Mello, I believe.
Oh, hi, this is Jordan. I was just listening in. I kind of joined in pretty late.
All good. Thanks for being here, Jordan. How about George Carter? All right. If not, let's see. We probably have like a few seconds left. I think we'll stick to the time and be mindful and just go ahead and close out. But we just want to thank you all for joining our session, and we're looking forward to the remainder of the summit on tomorrow. And we will be bringing these ideas back to ReImagine Appalachia. We have a note taker here, and also hope to bring your ideas for potential webinars as well. So thank you all so much for joining, and stay warm, and see you next time.
I just good advocacy.
Thank you, Alan. All right, everyone, welcome back. Folks trickling back into the room. We have a few minutes left in the our time together. As folks are coming back, I'll just lay that out for you. So tomorrow, we'll be back here again at 11 a.m. It should be the same link in your devices. If you had trouble getting into a breakout room, you may try updating your Zoom. I think the reason we had so much trouble today is because Zoom just did a major update. So anyway, but we'll be back at 11 a.m. with a fantastic panel, as well as another hour of breakout groups. But for now, I believe I see Lou and Amanda are back. I think Lou and Amanda are going to lead us through some summaries and next steps coming out of the great conversations that you all had today. And before I hand it over to you all, I just want to, you can unpin me. Oh, Annie, can you unpin me and pin? Yeah, perfect. The survey that Molly just dropped in the chat about today has information on how you can get more involved in ReImagine, and you can win prizes. So thanks, y'all.
Hi, everyone. So we just have a quick kind of chill debrief here at the end of the day. So I'm going to share my screen. I have another Mentimeter, which I know we all love. And so I'm going to get some feedback from all of you. And then hopefully after those, I think I have 3 questions, we'll kind of go into an open conversation debrief. We're going to hear from Amanda, her thoughts about today, and then kind of open it up. So let me share my screen real quick. Oh, I'm going to need sharing. I don't know why I no longer can. I had no problem before.
Just a minute, we're working on it.
Thank you. I don't know, Zoom is so weird and strange. But so I think we've scheduled 20 minutes for this. Is that right, Amanda?
15, but I'm sure you can take an extra minute. And then if you have the link to the Mentimeter, folks can start filling that out while we work on getting you screen sharing capabilities. If you want to drop that in the chat.
There's that. I'll move on to the next slide. So the question is, what did you hear today that excited you? So that's from your breakouts, that's from the beginning of the event, anything in particular, be as broad or specific as you'd like.
And if you can't get the link to work, you can put your answer in the chat and I will input it into the poll. And are Annie and Lou, can we get Lou? Are you able to screen share yet, Lou?
Not yet.
All right. I'm not sure what to do. So it's above my skill set.
It's way above.
Here we go. Try it now. Sorry about that.
Yep. Thank you.
Great.
That looked like, okay. There
it is. Now you can see the questions. What did you hear today that excited you? I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks. And I'm glad we're already getting some stuff in here, and they're very different. And a lot of them are exciting me. So like after we put our answers in here, we will be having a conversation. So I encourage all of you to elaborate on these in a few minutes when we open it up. And these are going to be helpful and useful aids for future documents and things like that. They're just a pretty representation of what we all heard today. So I'm going to give it another 30 seconds and then move on to the next question.
And for folks, hold on. Yeah, can you blow that up a little? That about it?
Yeah.
I was going to share as well for folks that have been interested in all these different word clouds we've had going today. We will share the screenshot of all these and follow up because it's hard to read them as all these cool responses keep coming in.
They also look so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this definitely won't be the last you see. I'm excited to put them in our manufacturing action plan.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. So which breakout session would you prioritize first? So I've been talking about low-hanging fruit and things like that. What would be your first go-to for us to start tackling? Now, I know you all didn't go to each of the breakouts, but just based off of the titles. This is a new one that I'm using that I really like. New slide. Seems like a lot of people are focused on manufacturing jobs and equity. Means ReImagine has a lot of work ahead of them.
Well, we're a coalition, so we don't do anything without everybody else doing it with us.
Everyone's raising their hand right now.
We got a lot of cat herding to do.
Yeah. For folks who aren't aware, we have a very small staff. We punch way above our weight class, so we don't do anything without the organizations that make up the group.
All right, we seem to be slowing down, so I'll give it another few seconds and let people input their thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next one.
You have a other question in the next slide, or should maybe people could put that in the chat if there was something that wasn't on here and they don't see it on tomorrow, something. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, what's missing?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's also a section in the survey that's kind of extra thoughts or things like that. So I would encourage to put it in there as well, because that'll be tracked. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question here. So what type of manufacturing work needs to be done in 2024? And I have 4 questions, I realized. So this is, do we need to work on regulation? Do we need to work on building cooperatives? Do we need to work on innovation and infrastructure? Whatever you can think of, put it in.
And if you put your answer in the chat, I can drop it in for you.
Seeing a lot of this Craigslist for circular manufacturing, which I like to see. Lots of collaboration, cooperatives. Make sure to come tomorrow to tomorrow's session as well. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff on cooperatives tomorrow. Cooperatives again, upskilling, drawing businesses into the ReImagine network, working on that. Unions, infrastructure, renewable technologies, awesome. So I'm going to give it another 30 seconds, so make sure to get your thoughts down, and then we'll move on to the next one, which is a follow-up to this question. Unions, Training. Training. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. So what is your role in them? You know, we all have different jobs. Some of us may not be in a job that directly works on manufacturing or circular economies or cooperatives or anything like that. So what is all of our roles as individuals, as organizations, companies, to help make those manufacturing strides in 2024? So far, very different answers, which is good. Cooperatives. Wow, these are awesome, very interesting. Great. I'm gonna be closing it down here in a few seconds and then opening up to discussion. I like that my name got thrown in there. Thank you guys. I'm gonna put that, but appreciate that. I love when my hand gets raised for me. Great. Okay, I'm gonna close this down so we can start having a discussion. I'm gonna stop sharing, but the next slide is survey. So make sure you do the survey. We'll have some time at the end for you to do. But now, Amanda, I want to hear your thoughts about what happened today briefly, and then we'll bring it out to the audience.
I thought this was an amazing day, like just really good thoughts and contributions, and very active conversation in my breakout session. I definitely heard some actionable items particularly from the keynote panel. I heard some projects we should write up as models for folks to think about replicating or expanding in their own communities. I also heard the idea of some sort of matchmaking for the circular economy. Like, how do we connect manufacturers with waste to, companies that need that for raw material? What's the role for entrepreneurship in making those connections? Maybe there's a role for co-op as well to help solve some of the barriers to entering these markets. I heard somebody sort of mention the need to really dig into maybe interviewing or surveying manufacturers or potential entrepreneurs on what are the barriers to entering these sites and coming up with creative solutions. Lots of interest in having companies develop zero waste plans or something along those lines, and figuring out some policy ways to promote that. So yep, I definitely heard some great ideas and things we can put in that manufacturing action plan, but love to hear what others heard or think should also be in that plan.
Thanks, Amanda. Anyone else have any thoughts? Feel free to just throw it out there right now.
I thought it was an amazing potpourri of all kinds of things. And there wasn't necessarily any pattern to it, but it was just wonderful the way it all came together. That's my 2 cents.
This is Steve. I mean, I guess what I'll say is, I mean, we've been working on manufacturing now increasingly really in the last year, 18 months, but for several years in ReImagine Appalachia. And I think the conversation today really, I guess, fueled my ambitions. And the whole point of this conversation was to get to a manufacturing plan. But I think we have to be bold about that. And there are enormous challenges in terms of job quality and manufacturing. Unionizing manufacturing is a lot harder than like raising union density in construction. But I feel like a lot of the conversations we've had in the last 18 months to 3 years and the conversation today are we're kind of edging towards a team and a level of understanding that will allow us to articulate a bold plan. And I mean, we really depend in part on the energy of labor in this sector, you know, as a partner. And yeah, one of the big changes in the last 6 months is the successful UAW strike in the auto company. A lot of that being driven by the desire for or commitment to getting union rights in the EV industry and to making it possible for the UAW to organize that. So again, I think we're after an extended collective thinking process. I think we're on the verge now of actually being able to operationalize some really powerful next steps.
I like what you said there. You said fueled ambitions. I think we have a lot of takeaways and a lot of work to do. And I know I feel very invigorated to do that work. And I hope we all feel the same way. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? We have a few more minutes left. Love to hear the feedback.
Yeah, I would just like to say we have to see where there's a closer coupling between energy and manufacturing. No manufacturing is going to take place without energy. And that's where we got these coal-fired plants that already exist. They need to be a place where manufacturing takes place. Like I said before, we just don't want to go from megawatts to megawatts. We want to go from megawatts to mega products to be able to diversify our income and also to create non-exportable jobs and bring manufacturing back to the United States that's been missing, that we have to have critical to our national security and to our economic security.
Thank you.
I love that. Megawatts to mega projects.
So I'm just going to end it off here. I thank you all for coming. Amanda, I'll let you speak too, but I want to highlight that there is a tomorrow. We do have more tomorrow, so make sure to clear your calendars for the day. And hopefully we'll see you there. Amanda, I'll let you. I don't know if anyone else has any final words.
I think that might be Dana. Or Dana, do you think that might be me?
I'm happy for it to be me for the sake of time. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back here, same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow, 11 a.m. For a fantastic webinar. Again, as noted, everyone will receive a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the presentations given. We do not share the registration list because it is nearly 500 people, and it's a lot of personal information to be sharing 500 people, 500 ways. Trina, so I apologize for that, but we are happy to get you in touch with, any, if you were in a particular breakout room, we can probably help with specific requests that you might have as far as networking. The agenda will be different tomorrow, Bryn. We can maybe drop the link to tomorrow's agenda in the chat, but we're going to be focusing on a broad range of issues, thinking about how we tell the story of our successes in ReImagine and what we want to build for the region. And the agenda is in the chat.
Yeah, and I'll add it is less manufacturing focused, although we will have a session on co-ops in the new energy economy that was originally scheduled for today, but that'll be tomorrow. I think one of the things that came up today that we'll be digging more into tomorrow is also this idea of community benefit plans and community benefit agreements. We'll be having a roundtable discussion about what do we want in those things, you know, union jobs, diversity, apprenticeship, utilization requirements, that sort of thing. We also have a program around reimagining your community that Natalia leads. I don't see her, but promoting visioning at the more localized level. I don't know if you want to say something about that, Natalia.
Oh, no, okay. Yes, we will be having Commissioner Shireen Hess from Indiana County, PA, overall county, who will be talking about some of the work that they're doing and some of the challenges, but we'll be using that as a launch pad for a broader conversation of how communities are working within the framework of the federal infrastructure package on a grassroots kind of ground up level. And this, again, as Amanda and Dana have said, it's going to be a broader conversation. It's not necessarily focused on manufacturing, but it's focused on what communities want, whether that's EV charging stations or solar farms or, you know, other community assets. So that should be an interesting session.
We also have a comms workshop for how to better tell our stories. So if you're comms people in your group, that'd be a good one for them to go to.
Great. So we're gonna close out for the day. I think our staff can stay on for another minute or two if anybody has any pressing questions about tomorrow. I appreciate everyone so much. We always say the greatest asset you all have is your time and your wisdom, and you shared both with us today. So we could not be more grateful at ReImagine. So with that, I will let you all go. And like I said, so this meeting is officially adjourned. Stop the recording, but we can stay on for another minute if anyone has any quick questions for the group. Hi, Heidi. Did you, or is that a round of applause, or was that, okay, just a round of applause. Appreciate that. Yes, thank you. I apologize for putting you on the spot. I thought it was a hand up. Great. Anybody want to throw a hand up for any questions before we all hop off and hopefully eat lunch if we haven't yet for our busy staff? All right. I don't see any hands up with any burning questions, so I'll just thank you all again, and we will see you tomorrow. Oh, there's something in the chat. Thanks to everyone. Yes, thank you, Sally. Always happy to see you at our events. Thank you for everything you do, Sally. All right. I'm gonna hop off, y'all. I got I have a 2 o'clock. Sorry.
Yep,
so,
same.
Or
Take
do
care,
we,
everybody.
yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Yep, I have the chat saved.
Okay. Bye.